Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 165, Learning XPages, Part 6, Forms, Views, and XPages. In this one, we actually start coding. Okay, we're coding today, so let's get right to the demo. Okay, so we made our app, and now it's actually time to start doing something that's kind of worthwhile. So we're going to go into the Forms section and make a form. And what the form is going to be to an XPage application is kind of like a table definition in the relational database world. It's really not going to be much more than that. Um, so we're in a form. We made it. We call it company, and we're going to make a couple fields. If I got that right, we're going to start giving them names. And we're going to do unique for a unique key. And then this is going to be my company, so companies have a name. They have an address, one. Sometimes we have two lines. We'll do address 2. And we'll do city, state, and zip. All right, nothing fancy. Now, an old school notes application, you put markup and stuff here and all that. It's really not necessary in an XPages application. And quite honestly, you can add fields on the fly in an XPages application, or really even notes, that don't even show up on the form. So that's just basically a part of the NoSQL world, I guess, is so we can add fields onto our record or our document as we call it, and they do not have to show up on the form. But if you open the document with this form, you won't see them. They'll be hidden because there's no little window in these field names to expose those fields, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And hopefully that wasn't all that confusing. So we are going to save that. Okay, and now we're going to come to a view. And we're going to come into this untitled view, and we're going to do some stuff with it. And we're going to call it name. We're going to, oops, add a column, and I'm just double clicking on here. All right, there's 1, there's 2, city, and we really don't care too much about this view. I just want to kind of show you how it's made. Okay, so we made the columns, but the definition for the column is right now the number of the view, and we can do, the number of attachments and last modified date. So there's stuff built into the document already for us. But we're going to come over to our field list, and we're going to do name and address 1, address 2, city, state, zip. And because I forgot it, we might as well just throw unique on here for the time being. And unique. Okay, now the first column we're going to sort. So we have sortable things. When we do lookups and things later on, like we're going to try to get documents by key or so, it must be run against a sorted column. So in the column properties, there's a bunch of properties here. We're going to just turn sort to ascending. And there's no documents to see yet, but if there were, then you'd actually see it. And we're going to save that, and we're going to give this a name. We're going to just call this company by name. Oops. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this view, and I'm going to rename this company by unique. And I'm just going to drag this bad boy over here. I'm going to make this sortable. Turn this off because now it's irrelevant. Here because we're going to sort by the unique key. And now we'll be able to do a lookup by key. Okay, so let's make a next page. We're going to call this home. And I am going to reiterate that, this is not necessarily going to be the greatest application in the history of the world. Okay, so we can just type right on here, home. Okay, but that's not all that impressive. If we look at our XPages, we've got this area. This is kind of like a WYSIWYG IDE in theory, and we can drag things onto it. We've got properties, events, and problems. Over here, we have an outline, so we can get to different things here. So if we do here's the properties for the XPage itself. Now that we're out of the typing zone, we're on the page. We can bind to data, which we're really not going to mess with. There's all sorts of properties here. So there's just a ton going on. I'm going to try to hit what makes sense as we go along. Here's events for the page, before page load, after render response, and some of these stuff get tied into the JSF lifecycle, which I do not have a great grasp of. And if there's any problems in our application so far, they would show up here. So I typed in home here in the WYSIWYG area, but I could also go to source. And now there's this XML representation of it. So I've typed in home, and I'm going to just throw in a tag, because you can actually type in, HTML tags right here. And I'm going to do Control Shift F to just make that a little nicer looking. Okay. Now, because this is a template on my local machine, you can't really see it. You can't really preview it, and this is where I was saying this is kind of a pain. So we're going to make a new database over here so we can see this. And we're going to put it on the server, and it is best to work off a server for testing and not the local preview server that comes with Designer. And we'll call this Network 2. And the URLs do get case sensitive, so I'm going to keep that as lowercase n. Okay, now this is just a generic database because I didn't tie it in. I didn't tell it that it's a piece of this. So we're going to come back here in Application Properties, and we're going to say Temp Network. We're going to copy that, click over here, say Inherit Design. And I do this all day long, right? When I make a change, I click here, I do replication. No, I'm sorry, application, refresh design. I really do it all day long, but it's Sunday as I record this. Okay, so now it's refreshed the design with this template. And if we look here, our views are here. If we actually did create this company form, those fields we dropped in are here. I didn't put any labels on here because I don't intend to use it in here. And if we look at the access control list, the default is no access, so it's going to ask me to sign in. So we come to our browser. It's going to ask me to sign in. And we say no to that. And we don't see our home page. And the reason why we don't see our home page is we didn't tell the application what the home page was. So we come back to our properties, and I could do this in the designer as well. And there's launch. Oops, over here is launch. And I could say open designated XPage. Looks kind of weird. I'm not actually used to seeing it here. And then if we come back here and do this again, there's our home with our H3 tags there somewhere if we were to view the source, or H1 tags, I'm sorry. Okay, and all this other stuff which we don't care about, but we can see it's bringing down Dojo, some different Dojo things. This is a combination of that. That's that JavaScript and CSS aggregation I was talking about. So it's combines it into one file, and it works. So we actually have a web page now. Yay! So now we're cooking. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and I'm going to drop in a button. Nope, I'm sorry. I don't want to drop in a button. I want to drop in a link. I'm going to drop in a link, and we're going to use this to create a new company. And in the link property, there's all sorts of things you can do here, but we can open a page. We can open another X page that would be our company page, but of course we actually do not have that X page yet. So let's save this and close it. Oops, I thought I had saved there. I guess I didn't. And we're going to make a new X page, and we're going to call this company. And just so we know where we are, I'll just throw that there for the time being. Now, before we really, let's do this. Let's go back to home, click this link, open page for the link properties, company, and we're going to test this again. And I probably should just bookmark this. Oops. here. This can get annoying, so and it looks like we lost our home page for some reason. I'm going to blame that on having designer open when I'm messing with the properties, so let's do it this way. We're going to go into application properties, launch, and we're going to try this again through designer. The designate web browser designate is home. Save this, close those, and we're going to try this again. And we're going to refresh our design. And now we should have our home page back, and we have a link that says new company. And it takes us to the company page, so that's kind of cool. But the link looks ugly because we're not using any kind of styling yet or so. So while we're here, let's throw in some Bootstrap. Because we have Bootstrap, the XPages for Bootstrap project installed on our server, we can make use of Bootstrap. And all we have to do is give it the right name. It does not show up in the list. You have to know the name. The name is on the server and directories, and we can find it later. But I know what the name is, so I'll tell you. Bootstrap 3.1.1. I will also say that as I record this, it's Sunday night, and the Philadelphia Eagles are playing the New York Giants in football, and I would really like to see the Eagles win. So if I do yell or get excited, well, wait for it, because that probably means the Eagles did something really good. Okay, so we put Bootstrap on there, and Bootstrap gives us some properties. And if you've not used Bootstrap before, which I'd be shocked if you hadn't, because it's a great project, but we can do get bootstrap.com, and all sorts of stuff is here, and it's good documentation. Here's buttons and stuff like that. So here's, let's say if we wanted a blue button primary, so we can style it, not just a button though, you can style a link to look like a button. So we can come back to our link, and in the properties there's a style here, and we can paste that in, button primary. And we're going to save this and refresh design. And again, early on in the application, the refresh design kind of business sucks. I admit it. But get used to it, because when you're later on in an application, then that's the way it should work. And now it should look like a button. And it takes us to our page. Okay, now in a traditional XPages application, if we go to the company page and we want to bind it to a document resource, it's very easy to do. You go to data, you come down here, you do domino document, and you give it the form name that you're interested in. You can change that name from document 1, and quite honestly, now you can just start dropping crap on. And you've got your page, and you can put buttons there and save it and stuff like that. And what's going on here is you're talking right to the document, the domino document. We're not going to do that in this series. We're going to use Java because Java gives us the ability to really extend that document and add in additional logic later on, which may not make sense, at least early on in this application, and I don't know how far we're going to take it, but trust me, it makes sense later when you've got big applications that talk to each other and stuff like that. I've said on the show before about having a business API and stuff like that, so we're going to do some baby steps for that. Actually, well, let's do that again. Let's undo that. We're going to leave that there because that just saved me time in building it, but we're going to change the binding afterwards. So we're going to just drop that on and save that. Okay, so let's go into Java. We're going to make a class, a Java class, an object that's going to represent the company document. Again, it's going to really not give us much more functionality just yet, but it won't be long until it does, if all goes well. So we're going to do new Java class. And you're supposed to do this thing, you're backwards, domain name and stuff like that. So I'll humor the Java gods, and we'll do something like this. And I'm going to call this class company. Oops, I don't need that there. This is the package name, and this is the class name. Okay, so com.ni9.network, and then company. And we're going to say finish. And now we are in Java. Okay, the first rule about managed beans are there are managed beans, or there are rules to manage beans. And one of the rules really is we have to implement serializable. And what that means is that it really makes it allows Domino to easily push the data off to disk and be performant and stuff like that. And I did mess up a last take. I did about 10 minutes and it was on pause. So I forgot to hit record. So in that time, I changed my font a little bit. I'm not sure if you noticed that. And I did mention that it's Sunday night football, and I'm watching the Eagles beat up on the New York Giants 10-0, and I couldn't be happier that the Giants are losing and the Eagles are winning because I do enjoy the Eagles. Not as much as the Philadelphia Flyers, though. So, okay, so we've implemented serializable, and we've got it like a little warning, a little error here. It needs to find the type. So we're going to click on this, and it says import serializable from the Java IO package. Okay, so it does a lot of things for you. That's really kind of nice. We still have a warning after we've done that, and we have to give it a serial number. And I've really never messed with the serial number, so I just always use the default. Some people use like a random number or something like that. It can matter. It has not mattered for anything I've ever done yet. Okay, so and again, all serializable does it's code that's built in that allows Domino to offload this to disk to save memory and stuff like that. Okay, so now we don't want to work with the document itself, right? I've said that a couple times. You know, the record from this form is we want to work with the Java object, but the Java object has to work with the form and the document. So we've got fields on the form. We have to represent those fields in the Java object, and there are ways not to have to do this. I'm not there yet, so we're gonna make private variables for every field that's on that form. Private, this is the variable type, string. We're going to do private string name. Note that we've got semicolons after each line. It really likes that. And we're going to do a little cut and paste so you don't get too bored. So that is every field that's on the form, but we want a few others. Private string unit, which is the unique identifier representing the document. It's a little easier to work with that later on. Private Boolean, true or false. Valid. I put these in a lot of my objects so I know whether or not this really should be a valid object or not. And last one, Boolean new company. So whether or not this is a new company. Now we've got these warnings here because it's telling us that these have not been used locally, and we'll deal with that in just a minute. Another rule for managed beans is it needs to have an argumentless constructor. Okay, done. Let's cross that off the list. Okay, so I had to pause it there because Eagles game is just dominating the Giants because they suck. And I forgot exactly what I ended that pause with, but we've got our argumentless constructor. So now here it is. Here's the money shot. This is the best part of my day when I get to do this. Is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on source, and I'm going to do generate getters and setters. And this is going to generate code for me based on these private variables. Okay, I don't care about the serial version thing, but I care about address, city, name, new. Now for new, I don't really care about set right now, though I could leave that in and make that private. But I don't really need that. State, the unit again. I don't want a set there. I never really want to set a unit. That's done for me. Unique, valid, and zip, and probably unique could even go without a set, but we're gonna let it go. So look at that. Look at that. That's just great. That's just stuff you don't have to do. Now, there are ways to create your object or so you don't have to have every field hard-coded in here and stuff like that. That has something to do with, I believe, extending a data object, but I'm just not quite there yet. And, oh, look, the Eagles scored again, I think. Oh, I have a good friend, Mitch Cohen, who's a big Giants fan, and he's not a developer, so he'll never see that. But he backs the wrong team. He likes the Giants, not the Eagles. But he also works for Colgate and uses Colgate toothpaste, and I prefer Crest too. So I guess we'll just guys from two different sides of the tracks. Anyway, okay, so we've got these setters and getters on there. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to need some way to load the document from a disk, right? Because we want to save this and load this. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste in here a method, and it's going to be a load, okay? And it says public void, and void means don't return anything. So you see here we have public string, so this is going to return a string or a boolean. Here it's kind of like a subroutine in load scripts. It's don't return, don't return anything. Okay, just run this, and we're passing in a document, and you haven't seen this yet, but I'll show you how I call this later on. So this expects a document, and it's very simple. I'm going to say if the doc equals null, then I'm just going to set this valid to be false. So then I'll know later down the line that this is not, a valid company because there's no document there. If the document does exist, then I'm going to assume that that's been gotten already, and I'm going to just load values. So I'm going to load values in a separate method, so more things can use it, right? So for example, I'm not always going to have a document or a known document to load a company. Sometimes I might just have the key, the unique key. So I'm going to have another load method, and this is called overriding. And so one is going to take a document, the other is going to take a string. And Java knows what to do. So I just have to call load, and I could pass in either a document or a string, and it's going to assume it's a key. And now this code that I paste in, this is our first look at the actual Domino object model that comes with it. So this is how we actually talk to our database, with a session and a database and a view and a document. But we've got all these errors because we've not imported anything to use these. So if I click on here, and hopefully it'll work, it's going to look for this factory. We're going to ignore that for a second. Let me just click on here. Okay, so here we have an option, import session org.openntf.domino. This is the OpenNTF API version of session. There's also a session for lotus.domino. If you don't use the OpenNTF API, well, one, I'm sorry, but then you can use the lotus.domino for all these classes, but you will have to deal with recycling on your own, and you're going to not have some of the goodies that they've fixed and added and enhanced. So we're going to take the org.openntf.domino. The factory is not finding it because sometimes DDE kind of stinks. So we're going to come up here and just mainly do this one. And I don't know why sometimes it finds things and sometimes it doesn't. Now the factory, I know, happens to live in utils.factory, okay? And I used to do the star thing, right? I used to do this all the time. And .openntf.domino.star, and that kind of seems to make things easier until Declan told me to stop doing that. So now I don't do that anymore. But the reason why you don't want to do this anymore is because you like you saw, you could have a factory in different classes, or you could have the same object name in different classes, and it might pick the wrong one. So you might as well just suck it up and make sure the right one gets in there. Database, we need to import that, so we're going to import database. Again, we don't want the lotus.domino, we want the openntf.domino. And that's kind of nice how they did that, because all these things are named the same. It's very easy to at least change your imports to get to different objects. Right? So if I just change all this to lotus.domino, view and session, stuff like that, then it should work. But again, then I've got some other issues with dealing with recycling and stuff. Okay, so we've got two methods to load. We can take a document or we can take a string, and both end up with a document that's going to get passed into a load values. Okay, and the reason I broke that up is so I can easily use a document or key depending on what I have at the time and end up with the same result. So my load values is simply it takes the document that's already been determined and pass in, so I know it's a good document, and I'm going to do assign to these private members, or whatever you want to call them, the values of the field on the document. So document, get item string, unique, get item string name. Note, this is a private method. So we had public over here. This is private. I don't, from outside my object, I don't want to call load values directly. I want to go through these loads, which will ensure that I actually do have a document. Because I don't want to call load values and pass in an array list or something like that at this stage of the game. Okay, and then if I do get this far, then I know it's a valid company, and I know it's not a new company because we pulled it off the disk. Okay, the score is 17-0. We're rocking and rolling. Okay, so next we want to have a method to create a new company, because sometimes we're going to have to create, with that button, new company, we're going to have to create it. So we're going to have a public create method, and all this is going to do, very little. It's going to assign a unique number to this method, because all my companies need to have a unique key that I generate, because that's just the way I work. The key that I like to use, I prefer to use, is really the old school. Again, if you're new to Domino, this won't make sense to you, but it's the old school @unique key, and that's just a unique key that's based on a timestamp and I'm going to show you one here, a timestamp and a name component. So here's what it looks like. So here's a name component for Watchtower, and then this is some kind of time and date stamp that you could even figure out if you needed to. So these are the unique keys that I like to use, and I like to generate them myself. A lot of people in this world and Domino development use unids for unique keys. I don't like that because I don't think that works if you copy your database to a new server and things like that. So I always just got into @unique. We're going to say the valid is true because we at least have this piece, so we're going to say it's valid, and that the new company is set to true. So it's really, the object will be set up and it's just waiting for values. Okay, now we can load, we can create, we might as well figure out a way to save. So the save is going to look very similar to the load values, as we're going to have a public method save. And just like we did before, we're going to get the documents. And I might have, in my last attempt, I renamed this view company unique. And I forget when I did that. Because originally I had a company by unique, but because my code was referencing company unique, then I decided to just suck it up and rename the view so it doesn't mess up or anything like that. Okay, so we're going to, when we do a save, we have to first get the document. So this is how it works, is once you're using these Java objects, you use the document on disk to load it, but then you don't care about it. It's gone, right? You just forget about the document. We're not saving the document object anywhere inside here because we can just get it again whenever we need it. And so we're just saving the values inside the Java object, but then when we go to save it, we need to retrieve that document again and then write the values back out to disk. Okay, and it's going to be basically the same thing. If the document is null, then we're going to actually do a create. We're going to do database create document, and we're going to make sure that it has the form name. This is kind of important for our views. The form name of company, which is what this guy is right here, and that's how like the views work. So if we go to this view, and I didn't do that here, I probably should have. So if we go to the view, it's a simple search right now. So that's going to be any document in the database. Well, we don't want that. We want to say select form equals company. See, this is what happens when you really don't practice this stuff and you're just programming. This is not the way to do things. You want to think these things through. So I want to update this view too while I'm thinking about it, and we'll say select form equals company. So when we start adding contact documents and ticklers or activities or whatever, then we can keep our views separate. Okay, so form is company, and then we're going to call it save values. If the document is not null, then it means we found an existing one. Then we're going to just go right to save values. And here's what this is. Okay, and all this is we're going to say doc replace dot item value, the field name on the disk on the document with the member name. Now in this case, because it's starting from scratch, it's very clean. This is the same name here. These do not have to be the same. This could be anything, and the form name could be anything. And really, this field name does not even have to exist on the form itself. It could be, we could add something else, which we probably will at some point, and not update the form. That really doesn't matter. Um, and then finally, we do a doc.save. And then we're going to say new company is false because now it's no longer a new company because we know it's hit the disk. Okay, so while I'm here, I'm going to do just a couple other quick things. I want a method that I can always use to get the document because I'm going to want to be able to delete a company too. So to delete a company, I'm going to make a remove method, and there's really going to be nothing to it. And I'm going to just say return, and I'm going to basically create a new method called getDocument, and I'm going to remove it and say true. So if we go into a document, the document has a remove method, right? That's how you delete a document with just the normal API. Well, my API, I want the same thing. I want to be able to remove the document by calling my object saying remove. So all that is going to be is we're going to add another little method here to get a document, and we might even use that other places. And it's going to be basically the same thing that's inside here, the save and the load, but I'm just going to return the document. So now, if I ever do actually need the document, I'll get it. And if the document doesn't exist, then I'm just going to return a null. Okay, so now I can call remove at any time I want. So let's save that. Okay, now I know I went fast, and I know it seems like a lot of work, but once you get through it a couple times, it's really not. Um, Again, all I really have done so far is emulate what's on the document, but eventually we're going to build this up more. So this is a company, so we might have our own method: get contacts, get primary contacts, create a contact, get you know all locations, get shipping data for last month. So all sorts of things we can add in here now that we have this base established. Okay, so if we go back to our X page, and I just lost my mouse here. There it is. If we go back to our X page, this company X page, so we're going to well, actually, we're not going to do that yet. But we're eventually going to come back here and we're going to kill this document one and we're going to bind to the object directly. But we're not quite ready to do that yet. And that's the demo. If you have any questions for me, here's my information, and I thank you for your time.